we do put ourselves last. I mean, that's the first point in my book. I mean, even the airline tells you to put on your own mask before your child. But women really it's so interesting, Dave. We're so proactive and we stay on top of all the latest health information, and we're pretty much, into preventive medicine. But when we're sick and when we don't feel good, we hesitate to call the doctor. We're too busy. We've got kids at home, a project due at work. I mean, whatever the heck it is, it doesn't matter. But there's always a reason that we can't I'll do it tomorrow. I heard that a lot. I'm really planning to, Sue, they would say. I'm going to do it next week.
Okay, everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have another amazing author with me today. I love having a podcast because I get to meet some of the most interesting people around the world. And my author today has a library of books behind her as we're chatting, which is intimidating because I think I have maybe 10, and you've beat me with your background. That's amazing. Nice to see you. It's great to have you back on. Susan, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Living the Next Chapter.
Well, thank you so much. And really, thanks for having me. I so appreciate it.
It's exciting to have you here. You have a new book. Let me get this right. This is your first book.
Right.
Okay, that's exciting. So
yes, it is.
I'm always interested in the idea behind writing a book and why writing this book is important to you as an author. Can you kind of explain where this all began for you to say, I want to become an author?
I shall indeed. And it's a long story that I'll try to make short, although, that's not my skill, but I'll give it a shot. Years and years and years ago, I had some exploratory surgery that I knew I didn't need. I was right. I didn't need it. And afterwards, I was really upset with myself. And I thought, why did I agree to that? But anyway, then I dropped it. Life goes on. I was a young mother. I had a couple kids. So it is what it is. Many years later, after I retired, I went back to school and took some anthropology classes, actually medical anthropology classes. And for one of the classes, I did a project on women who had undergone hysterectomies. And several of them had said that they too had felt that they didn't need the surgery, but they agreed to it anyway. And I mean, I've never had a hysterectomy, but that, of course, triggered my memories about my own experience. And then the question I really asked myself is, how do we as women make our medical decisions? So I interviewed about 50 or 60 women, and not all with different diseases, but mostly different diseases, and extrapolated several things that they had in common, and which led them to the decisions that they had made. And, I learned when I was in school that academics write for each other. And I was learning all this good information about medicine and women, and nobody knew. I mean, it's in the academic journals, but what good does that do most of us? So there were two reasons I really wrote the book. I definitely wanted to share the information. Plus, I was really curious about how, we make decisions in the first place.
Okay. Amazing. So talk about the book. What's the title of your book?
The title, well, I'm changing the title, but at the moment it's Sidelined, How Women Manage and Mismanage Their Health. And I've gotten a lot of static from that because people feel I'm blamed, the mismanaged part, that they feel I'm blaming women. And actually, I'm not blaming women. The book is totally supportive of women. So I've been trying to I am talking to the publisher about changing the title and just, waiting for them to get back to me. It takes more patience than I have. But anyway, it's really empowering women and giving them strategies to navigate the healthcare system, which is biased against women in a certain sense.
Okay, so talk to a new author that's listening, and they're trying to determine the name of their book. Any words of wisdom from your perspective?
Yeah, I do have a couple. And I did do this. It didn't serve me well, but I still, when I write my second book, I will do it again. The first thing is give people a list of 3 titles. I don't know if you're on social media, but put it out there. Ask your friends, your partner, your family, and see which ones people vote and listen to their comments. I did do that, and everybody liked it because they had read the book and they knew that I was helping women correct any mismanagement, and I wasn't blaming women at all. But nevertheless, that is absolutely a piece of advice. And the second thing I would do is, once you decide or tentatively decide on a title, is to go to Amazon and check it, see how many titles there are with similar names or the same name. And that was another mistake I made, because later on, when I went to check out Sidelined, I didn't put in the subtitle. I just put Sidelined, and there's a lot of books talking about, one's even about golf or something, so they're all over the shop. So that's the other thing I would do, because you really don't want to be, one of 1,000 titles. Not a good idea.
Yeah, it's easier for your audience to find you then if you have something unique. And it's hard to be unique when there's so many books out there and so many authors, right?
Yeah. I read somewhere that there's like 1 million new books published every year. That's amazing. So even if I'm wrong, say it's only 500,000, the point's still the same. It's just incredible.
Well, if there's that many new books, I got a lot more episodes to make for my podcast.
And a lot more books for your shelf, right?
Oh my gosh. I might catch up to you if I do that. That's amazing. Okay, so what part of your writing the book was a joy for you, and what was more of a job? What was hard in the process of writing your book?
That's a really good question. Well, it was a joy for me. Let me start there, because it was a joy for me, I think, to really interview all of the women. Like, I met some wonderful women, and all of them were so willing to share their experiences. They all wanted to help other women. I mean, it really was heartwarming. They were so generous and gave me such intimate details of their lives. And that was just a true joy. I think the hardest part is just sitting there, up in my office. I can't say day after day, because it wasn't a full-time job, but it was a lot of sitting up here, hoping that what I was writing was well said, hoping that people would understand it, hoping the book would get out there. It took me about 10 years off and on to write the book, because there was a tremendous amount of research. And sometimes it was hard not to get discouraged. But I stuck to it. And now, of course, I'm so glad I did. But it's an arduous process. I don't want to say it isn't, because I love writing. And sometimes when I put something on the page, I thought, holy cow, Sue, that's beautiful. You wrote that. And other times I say to myself, oh my God, did I write that? That's terrible. So it just sort of depends how it goes.
Amazing. So while we're chatting, I have your website up here in front of me, and I noticed that you are definitely in the media. I'm seeing links to all kinds of podcasts that you've been on or a part of.
Right.
Talk a little bit about connecting your journey, your writing, your story, and what you're talking about with podcasting. Has this been beneficial for you as a guest?
Yes, I think that the podcasts have really helped sell books. And in the interest of full disclosure, I'm 80 years old. Social media is not my thing. So I have hired a PR person and a social media person to help me. And they booked the podcast for me, and they helped me with the social media. Because my last TikTok, believe it or not, just had 116 or 17,000 views. I mean, I'm thrilled. So,
wow.
Here I am, the sort of 80-year-old TikTok sensation.
Oh, I love it. You are going to blow up. This is great.
No, that's a lot of people. But I think the podcasts have really helped more than the social media. Well, I don't know if that's considered social media. I guess not. Yeah. Is it? You would know more about that than me.
I think it's a good way to get your voice out there and people can connect with you. Mm-hmm. Talk to an author now that's listening that hasn't been on shows. What's the value then beyond what we've already mentioned for an author to be on a podcast to talk about their book?
Well, I think it gives you a lot of practice too on how to talk about your book. So when somebody asks you, I'm at this point, there's nothing anybody can ask me about the book that I can't answer. That was not true in the beginning. I've had a lot of practice now. And it's funny, you know your own book, but it's really hard to recall it when you're in front of an audience or when you're talking and you're being recorded or whatever. And it does help sell books. I mean, if you want to sell the book, it's one really good way to do it.
Yeah.
If you're smarter than me and can book them yourself, then it doesn't cost anything. So it's a free way of getting advertising.
Awesome. Talk a little bit about our good friend and mutual contact, Beth Silver, and what she's doing to help you What is it kind of like to work with somebody like that as well? I want to give her a shout out because she helped arrange all this. So hi, Beth. But talk about working with Beth.
That's really nice. And I'm really glad you asked me that. Beth is wonderful. If anybody needs a publicist, I certainly recommend Beth Silver. She's in New York, and you can just Google her, I'm sure. She does arranges all the podcasts. She helped me find a social media person who is also excellent. She's really held my hand occasionally when I get a bad review, and sometimes that happens. And I have to say that that's really upsetting. But it is, you have to expect it. Not everybody's going to love your book. And she's there when I get a great review, and she's, calls me, and we virtually have a glass of champagne or whatever. So I do recommend having somebody help you with PR. The social media, maybe more people can do by themselves than I can. But a PR person really has contacts. They know people. It has a professional vibe that I think is important. So if I don't know what everybody's, fees, or how do I say it? Everybody's bank accounts are different. But if you can afford it, I do recommend it very highly.
Because it's one thing when I talk to authors is you write a book and then you have to promote the book. That's another whole skill set altogether. And just when you think you're done, the book is done, you have it in your hand, you're ready to go out in the world. You think you're finished, but that's just the starting line. Well, now you got to get out there and talk.
Exactly.
Right?
And you asked me what the hardest part of the book business is. And I would say the marketing. I don't really enjoy it. I love podcasts because I love talking to people. That's great. But I mean, I don't want to sit there and learn the social media. I should. I mean, I really should learn how to do all this myself. But I don't want to. I'd rather write. I like writing articles. And I think the marketing it's a different thing. Some people are marketers, some people are writers, and there's not that many writers that are marketers. I mean, as a writer, I like to be alone, although I love to talk to people, but I like being in my office. I don't want to be out there pushing the book and with books in my trunk, going from bookstore to bookstore. I mean, and I should. I'm not, and if you can do it, more power to you. It's just not for me.
So recognize where your skill sets are and then bring great people alongside of you where you need the help, right?
Yes, absolutely. And in all honesty, for those people who are preparing to write or are writing their first or even second book, you kind of have to figure how much money are you prepared to lose? That's what people told me when I started out. And of course, I thought they didn't mean me. But how wrong I was, you really will be very lucky if you even break even. So be careful what you spend and just figure you're going to lose. And if it's a win, that's fantastic. But if you're writing to make a living, get a day job. That's what I suggest.
What kind of doors are you foreseeing will open for you now that you have a book? What are you anticipating? You'll gain access to a new audience, maybe new opportunities? What are you hoping for now?
Well, I think first of all, having one book behind me makes it easier to get a second book published. Number one, right. And it gives me credibility. That's really what it does. It shows that a lot of people start books and then don't have the self-discipline to finish them. It shows I can do that. But I think that it just gives you a lot of credibility, and it says this person, whoever she or he is, whoever they are, will do what they say they're going to do. And it's true. I mean, if you can do it, you can do it. And a lot of people don't want to and don't finish. And I can understand why, because it's hard work.
Before we jump more into the book itself, the one thing I picked up on was your comment around bad reviews. I've had other authors come on, and some people really struggle with bad reviews and getting comments on something they're so passionate about. They spent so much time writing and putting their heart and soul into, and then you have someone leave something that's not constructive, right? Maybe it's a review. Maybe there's reviews that are constructive that help you become a better author. That's great. I love those reviews.
I agree.
But when it's not constructive, and they really struggle with this, and they're afraid to put themselves out there because they don't want bad reviews. To somebody who has had a bad review in the past, what would you say to another author that's struggling with that?
Well, I can tell you how I handle that, and I think it's a good way. let me start with the good reviews for a minute. Whenever I get a really good review, I always write a thank you note.
Nice.
Even if it's just on somebody, I mean, mostly people I don't know. So I just send a message and say, hey, thanks, or whatever I say. When I get a bad review, and I've only actually had one, and it was weird because she said the book was full of good information, but she had to slog through it. And so, that was not what I've heard in the past. People have told me it's such an easy read. They did it in one sitting. So I wrote her and I said, I'd love to know what, if I'm going to be writing book 2, what changes would you like me to make? Thank you so much for your feedback. I really appreciate it. I'm not quite sure what you meant, which part was the slog. Anyway, she never answered me. But that's what I recommend. And you may get some really good ideas, or somebody may say, well, no, I didn't really mean the whole book. I just meant this chapter or this story, or, you may get some great ideas. The whole world is not going to like your book. I don't care whether you're Leo Tolstoy or Jeffrey Archer or whoever you are, just how it goes. The other thing, while we're on the subject, is if the book doesn't sell, people have told me they get so discouraged. And I mean, it's discouraging. But on the other hand, if your book doesn't sell, you have to remember it doesn't mean that the book is not a good book. It means that nobody's read it. So those are two different things. So you can't take to heart the fact that it isn't selling and that you're a failure as a writer. You may be the best writer in the whole world, but if nobody reads the book, it's your secret. So I think that's really an important concept for beginning writers to realize or recognize.
That's good wisdom there. I like that.
I liked it too, because it's so true. I mean, really. Yeah.
For a new author, you have a lot of wisdom there, and I appreciate you sharing that. That's amazing. Okay, so for the person that goes online or goes to their local bookstore and grabs a copy of your book, what is your hope for the reader as they go through the book?
My hope, I have several hopes. Number one, the thing that surprised me the most when I talk to women is how few women ever talk with anybody else other than their doctor about their illness. So one thing I hope is that women reading the book will learn to talk about illness with their friends, join a support group. Illness is so difficult to go through alone. And I met so many women who were doing just that. So one of my first goals for the book is for women to talk to each other about being ill, disclose how they're feeling. I think that's really important. The second thing, and what the book's really about in a technical fashion, is it empowers women to navigate the healthcare system. One of the things I did not realize until I did my research is we really don't know as much about women's bodies as we do about men's. For example, women's illnesses get less research money than men's illnesses. So prostate cancer gets a lot more money than, say, uterine or ovarian cancer. But our cancer is more fatal. Nevertheless, you guys get the money. Women researchers get less money than male researchers. And women researchers are published less often than male researchers. So if you're a woman researcher researching a woman's disease, you're going to find yourself at the bottom of the funding barrel. And I think that that's important because as a result, there's less out there about women's diseases. There's a lot out there, but it's not the same quantity. And women for years have been left out of clinical studies. It's much better now, but we're still living with that unfortunate history. So I think it's really important for women to know some of these facts, to know what to expect when they talk with their doctor, to know what to do if they find the appointment unsatisfactory, to know how to handle it. There's all kinds of tips in there that will help women really navigate this unfortunate situation.
It's interesting. Yeah. So you're giving the tools and the expertise and the knowledge for your readers.
Correct.
To be healthy. And the one thing that I remember, somebody gave me an example of their grandmother, and it's a little far reaching for the context, but she'd bake cookies for her family. And what she would do is she would keep back all of the cookies that weren't perfect. So she gave all of her best to her family, and she would eat the ones that she wasn't proud of, right? She would hold them back. But the story there, kind of what it was basically saying was, in that situation, as women, she was giving out all of her best to everyone and not really taking care of herself,
Right.
really having the leftovers. And it was more of like time, giving all your time to everybody. And what you had left over was for you, right? And it
Yeah,
just kind of got the context that women are always giving and making sure everyone else is good
it's true.
and everyone else has the best. And I'll settle for the leftovers and not the pretty things or the nice things.
It's so
So
true.
I think women need this, your book, in a way to understand that you really do need to take care of yourself.
Well, and so many women don't. We do put ourselves last. I mean, that's the first point in my book. I mean, even the airline tells you to put on your own mask before your child.
Perfect. Yes.
But women really it's so interesting, Dave. We're so proactive and we stay on top of all the latest health information, and we're pretty much, into preventive medicine. But when we're sick and when we don't feel good, we hesitate to call the doctor. We're too busy. We've got kids at home, a project due at work. I mean, whatever the heck it is, it doesn't matter. But there's always a reason that we can't I'll do it tomorrow. I heard that a lot. I'm really planning to, Sue, they would say. I'm going to do it next week. That's not me. So I was, well, a little bit it is, I guess, actually. Yeah. But I was startled. I really did find that. And the other thing I found that's kind of connected to that is that women hesitate to get second opinions because we don't want to hurt the doctor's feelings. Meanwhile, we're scheduled for major surgery, like the women who had hysterectomies, for example, or even myself. I didn't get a second opinion either. I didn't want to upset the doctor. I didn't want to be rude. I mean, all of those ridiculous reasons, quite frankly. And second opinions are just so important when you're facing a major diagnosis or a major surgery. But it's tied to, we always want to be good to other people and we're not good enough to ourselves. That was a good point you made, and I appreciate it.
It's amazing. Yeah, and I think that's the one thing we all need to do is to take better care of ourselves. We are here for a reason. Our families are looking to us to be a good example on how we treat ourselves as well. And they're going to learn from our example. Right?
No, I think this is true for men and women. Absolutely. And think about it. If you don't feel well, your energy's down, you're irritable, you're just whatever, and you can't take as good care of your family as you can when you're feeling healthy, strong, and energetic. So if you can't do it for yourself, call the doctor and get a second opinion for your family, because you'll take better care of them if you can. And if you do, I should say.
Amazing. What is next for you? Well, you talk about book 2. Is that something that's in the very near future, or is that out in the distance? Talk about a little bit about that too.
Right now, it's out in the distance. I was going to do a book on shame. I was so surprised to find out how many women felt ashamed about being ill. And I wanted to do a book on that. But I'm not sure now. I'm still playing with it. I might do a book on old age because I think it gets a bad rap. It's not a bad stage of life at all. So I think that would be interesting. I'm not sure yet, so it's out in the distance. I'm busy writing articles, being on podcasts, playing with my grandchildren.
There you go.
So I'm still thinking, but there will be a book too. I just don't know when. Don't hold your breath.
There you go. I love it.
And it takes me a while.
Talk a little bit about the articles you're writing. Who are you writing for? What are they about?
I just wrote I'm going to be on a podcast. I can't remember when it is, frankly. So I just wrote an article for their blog, and I was recently, well, I guess it's been a while, but I was recently published on the Huffington Post. I don't remember what that article was about. I was published. I can't remember. Isn't that terrible?
Good. I love it.
Yeah, but I've been doing it, and I love writing articles. They're a little easier than books, not too much easier, but somewhat. They're short. They take less time to research just because they're shorter. It's basically the same process, actually, and that's one reason this book too is in the future, because as I research these articles, I'm just like I just got turned on about the old age thing. I hadn't really thought of that as a book. And now I might, ageism is pretty. Did you know that 50% of the world's population, that's 1 in every 2 people, think that old people are, sick, lose their memories? I mean, ageism is really predominant. I did not know that. And so now I'm fascinated by that and I'm exploring it. I was shocked.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
it is amazing. Really.
Wow. Well,
and being 80, it hit home. I thought, oh my goodness, what would they think of me? I'm so active,
Susan, when I met you, there was like no thought in my mind that you were 80 years old. There's no way. I'm like, that's impossible.
I agree completely.
I want some ID. I want you to show me your ID because there's no way. That's not true.
I know it can't be true. And where did the last 79 years go? Was I asleep? I mean, it's just amazing to me.
So I'm on your website. I love your website, by the way.
Thanks.
There's one thing that I clicked on that I really enjoyed was your 5 stress tips. 5 tips to help reduce your stress. And I'm like, this is nice. I'm like, everyone should read this. It's really cool. What was the idea about writing something about stress? Where did that come from?
Well, that's where the social media came in. I had done, I think I'm trying to remember back because that was a while back, but I think I had done a video for Instagram or a reel for Instagram, and it got a tremendous amount of views, as I recall. And I thought, wow, stress and anxiety seem to be generating a lot more traffic for me than some of the other podcasts. So I put it on my website for free, to try to drive people to the website. And it worked. I mean, I was able to build a little bit of a mailing list. Quite a big mailing list for me, actually. So I'm going to start doing newsletters and stuff like that. That's another project I have in mind. I have all these projects and just...
I love it. So people can come to the website. They can sign up and get information from you and kind of be part of your community.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about the website. What happens when I show up? Where should we go?
You go to susansalenger.com. That's SALENGER. People misspell it. So you can do that. And there's some stress tips. And I think there were health tips. You can hear some of my podcasts. If you're interested in the subject, you can buy the book, etc. Read the articles. I think the articles are posted. I have to go check. It's been a while.
Excellent. Yeah. Like I said, I'm scrolling through a ton of podcasts that you've been on. It's so amazing. And I see the link for Huffington Post here as well, which is awesome.
Right.
So everything we've been talking about is here. One-stop shop for everyone to find all things Susan.
Right. Exactly.
I would love for everyone to go buy the book, leave a wonderful review.
Are you nice?
An encouraging review, and help Susan with her plans for the next book by being a supportive community member for a new author who's putting themselves out there and sharing something that we all need to talk more about and make it more of a public conversation.
Very much. And that's really true for all of the authors that you talk to, and that was a really nice thing you just said. Thank you.
Amazing. And to Beth, again, we say it again. Beth, thank you for making this happen for both of us, connecting us. I really appreciate Beth's help and support. Susan, thank you for being part of Living the Next Chapter. It's so great to have you.
Thanks.
You got to come back for book 2 when that's ready.
Promise.
I have you recorded on tape now.
Absolutely. Right.
Okay.
I promise. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, everyone. Please go check out the show notes and support great authors like Susan. And thank you, Susan, for being part of the show.
Thanks for having me.
Jumping here at the very end, I want to thank you for coming. We have listeners around the world, and I got to tell you, as a podcaster, it is so great to hear back from the people who listen to the show. Now, you are still here. The podcast's over. Like we're sweeping up and putting the chairs away. You're still here. So, hi. I would love to talk to you. No, I really, really would. I would love to hear your voice. I would love to hear from you through email. You can do all that at livingthenextchapter.com. I say it fast because I love it. Living the Next Chapter. It's the name of the podcast. .com. How's that for easy? Right? Right. So come on over there and let's have a conversation. You can set up time in my calendar. You can air quote here, book time in my calendar, book next chapter. Let's have a conversation. Thanks for being here. See you on the next one. Cheers.
Mindshift Power Podcast, the podcast for teenagers and those who work with them. There's a huge problem in America today. There's a very large disconnect between teenagers and the adults who work with them. I'm looking to bridge that gap with real, raw, honest conversation, not held back by the chains of political correctness. You cannot solve a problem you do not understand. Want to understand teenagers today? Listen to this podcast. This podcast is for teens in the U.S. and Canada. To learn more, go to fatimabay.com/podcast or just look for Mindshift Power Podcast on any listening platform. I look forward to you being a faithful listener.